Eyewitnesses said they saw a man in a pickup truck deliberately run over another man, not once, but twice. Police could not find the victim's body or the pickup truck. And when police tried to talk to the two eyewitnesses, they had disappeared too. All police could find were some blood stains in the snow. But would this be enough to prove murder? On January 29, 2001, a member of a motorcycle gang in Duluth, Minnesota, called police to report his roommate, 27-year-old Eric Schriefer, missing. He said he hadn't seen Schriefer for the last 4 days, and he was worried.
Usually that doesn't happen. People that report missing persons usually call in within the first 6 to 8 hours in a panic.
Well, great. I appreciate your assistance. Have a good day.
Officer Ryan Temple was assigned to the case.
Hi, this is Officer Temple. I attempted to contact all the area hospitals, all the county jails in the area, the Duluth Detoxification Center. Also tried to contact the victim's family, his mother, his father, also his employer.
No one had heard from Eric Schriefer. He worked as an apprentice for the Boilermakers Union 647. Errol in his driveway. His wallet and winter coat were inside his house. Police discovered that Schriefer was last seen at a party in a motorcycle clubhouse. Two motorcycle club members who were at that party, Charlie Johnson and Herbert Zingel, said that Schriefer got into an altercation with Joseph Waymanen, a member of a rival motorcycle club.
Outside.
The two were separated and escorted outside, where the fight resumed. The witnesses say Waymanen easily won the fight. While Schriefer was still on the ground, Waymanen did the unthinkable. He got into his truck, started the engine, and intentionally ran over Schriefer. Amazingly, he wasn't killed. Waymanen then put his truck in reverse and ran over him a second time. Fearing for their own safety, the witnesses ran back inside. When they looked out again, both the truck and Schriefer were gone.
There was something more to this story than just a missing person.
The witnesses admitted they were drinking heavily that night and weren't sure of all the details. And the alleged fight took place almost a week earlier, and the inclement weather complicated the investigation.
There was a 4-day time lapse, and we had received approximately 8 inches of slushy snow in between time. It made it a very difficult crime scene. Once we got there, there wasn't a whole lot to see to start with.
When police looked into Joseph Waymanen's background, they discovered he had never been in trouble with the law. He was an ex-Marine who had served during the Gulf War and was a member of the Thunderbird motorcycle gang, although not an active member. Investigators needed to find some forensic evidence to corroborate the witness's story. Police wanted to find some way to verify the claims of two eyewitnesses that Eric Schriefer was run over twice by Joseph Waymanen in his truck.
From the very beginning, we had to try and put the case together to understand exactly what had happened and then attempt to try and locate where possibly the body had gone to after that period of time. So initially we were trying to put the puzzle together before we could find out where the body may have gone to.
Police set up a command post in the alley where the fight allegedly took place. Working in sub-zero temperatures, officers uncovered the top layer of new snow in order to search for blood. They were successful. They discovered a blood trail that led from the alley all the way to the end of a parking area, nearly 80 yards away. At the end of the trail, police found one very large pool of blood in the snow.
Due to the amount of blood that we found in that one spot, and the fact that there was no blood after that as we continued to excavate the snow past that point, we believe the body was loaded into the truck.
Medical examiner Dr. Donald Kundle was called to the scene.
A person to produce that much blood in one localized area had to still have their heart beating. They may have suffered serious injuries, but their heart had to still be beating in order to produce that much blood coming from a wound.
Once the heart stops beating, a body no longer bleeds. The blood evidence suggested that the victim was lodged under the truck and was dragged 80 yards. The pool of blood at the end of the trail indicated the victim was still alive and had been picked up from the snow. However, Dr. Kundle told police that without immediate medical attention, the victim would have died within 4 hours. To collect the blood evidence, police used a standard coffee filter to separate the blood from the snow. The filter trapped the red and white blood cells and allowed plasma and melting snow to drip through, just as the filter traps coffee grounds, not allowing them to drip into the coffee. Without a body, police had another problem: how to tell whether this was the blood of Eric Schriefer. But police got a break. They learned that Schriefer had undergone hand surgery a few years earlier when he had accidentally shot himself. The hospital saved Schriefer's tissue sample that had been sent to the pathology lab for analysis.
So you're getting the whole section.
The tissue was preserved in paraffin, which halts the degenerative process, preserving the tissue indefinitely. The blood DNA found in the snow was compared to the DNA from Schriefer's tissue sample. It matched. Police canvassed area hospitals, health clinics, and doctors' offices. No one with the type of injury Schriefer would have sustained had been treated. Convinced that Eric Schriefer could not have survived without treatment, the medical examiner signed a death certificate.
Yes, we do have a homicide, and one of the worst types for a detective to have, a homicide without a body.
The next step was for police to speak with the driver of the truck, Joseph Waymanen, but he was uncooperative.
He started to shut the door on me. At that point, I reached over and grabbed him by the shirt, informed him that he was under arrest for murder.
Police impounded Waymanen's vehicle. But a forensic analysis found no evidence of an accident. They found no trace of blood, body fluids, or hair anywhere on the truck or underneath.
The crime lab is well respected by law enforcement agencies in this state. They've got the best equipment, the most sophisticated gear. And if they couldn't find any evidence in the truck, then you started wondering, well, how could that be? How could somebody drive a truck over somebody twice and there's no hair, no blood, nothing? And that didn't seem right to me.
The lack of forensic evidence wasn't the only problem. Witnesses' credibility was another. During police questioning, both witnesses admitted they were inebriated at the time of the alleged accident. One said, quote, "I don't remember who was at the house, who came back. We were sitting there drinking. I know there was people in and out. Like I say, I'm drunk. I stay drunk as I can." And Joseph Waymanen maintained his innocence. With 2 inebriated eyewitnesses, no forensic evidence in Waymanen's truck, and no body to prove there had been a murder, prosecutors knew they didn't have enough evidence to go to trial. Investigators needed more evidence in the Eric Schriefer case, and the search for his body intensified. Police decided to find out how their prime suspect, Joseph Waymanen, spent his leisure time, and with whom.
I came across one of his friends and asked, when's the last time he'd spent time with Waymanen? Where was that he spent the time with him? And it came to be that within the week previous, he was ice fishing with this friend.
Police had a general description of the ice house that Waymanen and his friend used, but they weren't sure where it was located on the vast St. Louis River. Nevertheless, police were assigned to search the area.
He came across an ice house. We weren't quite sure whether it was the one that we were necessarily looking for, but as he was looking into the ice house, he found a hole that was larger than your normal ice fishing hole, probably the size of one that a human could be slipped into.
An underwater dive team searched the frigid waters of the St. Louis River for Schriefer's body. Conditions were miserable. It was snowing with wind gusts up to 30 miles per hour. Divers could stay under the freezing water for only 30 to 45 minutes before suffering hypothermia. After days of searching, they found nothing. Then investigators got more bad news. Their case against Waymanen was based almost entirely on the testimony of 2 eyewitnesses who claimed they saw a fight between Schriefer and Waymanen. But when police went to question them further, the 2 had vanished.
We have actually documented testimony from family members of the 2 witnesses that the Thunderbirds were approached by the Hells Angels and in turn approached the 2 witnesses and asked them to leave the community. Downright threatened them.
With no body, no forensic evidence against Waymanen, and now no witnesses, the defense filed a motion to dismiss the case. The prosecution was in a difficult position.
All the while, too, we are looking for the body. And we're looking for some more physical evidence to tie Joe Waymanen into this. We were convinced that he was the person responsible for the death, but he wasn't saying anything.
The more police thought about Waymanen's truck and the eyewitness testimony, the more they realized how unlikely it was that the undercarriage of his truck would be so clean, especially in the middle of winter. In the words of investigators, it was almost too clean. So nearly 6 months after the murder, they examined the truck once again.
We decided we would take the truck apart piece by piece until we were satisfied that there was no evidence to be found, or we actually found evidence, and that's what we did.
We had a belief all along that if the truck was used in transport of the body, there always has to be some type of forensic evidence that's left behind. Or in any kind of crime scene. I strongly believe that there's always forensic evidence that's left behind in any crime scene.
They hoisted Waymanen's truck up on a rack in the police garage, and bolt by bolt, they took the truck apart.
I think I used the analogy in one of my stories. It was like they were cutting their lawn with tweezers. They went over that vehicle inch by inch.
For over 2 days, police searched every inch of the vehicle. Finally, they found their first piece of evidence, a single strand of human hair that was attached to the front spring of the truck. And when they removed the top covering of the truck's cargo area, they found several small blood stains in the crevices. Police now suspected that Waymanan power sprayed his truck after the murder, and the water pushed the victim's blood into the tiny crevices between the sheets of metal. But scientists still needed to find out who the blood and hair belonged to. When police found blood stains and a strand of hair in the undercarriage of Joseph Waymanan's truck, they promptly informed Waymanan's attorney that they would be sending the materials for forensic testing.
Once the state could tie the body to Mr. Waymanan's truck, the case changed dramatically. And I talked to Joe and I told him so. Ultimately, it comes down to the old Kenny Rogers song. You gotta know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And I felt it was, when they found that blood in the truck, it was time to fold them.
Without even waiting for the results of the forensic testing, Waymanan agreed to lead police to Schriefer's body in return for a reduced charge of unintentional second-degree murder. The prosecution agreed, and Waymanan confessed.
It's my opinion that this forensic evidence was so powerful that Mr. Waymanan knew what the outcome would be when we sent it to the lab and just decided to plead guilty.
In Waymanan's taped confession, his version differed from the eyewitnesses.
I was panicking. I was in a state of shock. I knew all of this was going to come out eventually. I figured I was going to be going to prison. I was angry with him.
Waymanan admitted running over Schriefer in the alley, but said it was an accident. He also said he didn't realize Schriefer was stuck under the truck until he reached the end of the parking lot. Waymanan said he put Schriefer in the back of his truck and dumped him into the river the next day. He said the police had searched the correct spot in the St. Louis River, but the body may have drifted. When the divers returned for a second search, they still couldn't find the body. A few weeks later, after the plea agreement was signed, Schriefer's body surfaced by itself on the Wisconsin side of the river. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. In Waymanan's mother's garage, police found a cinder block. Its size and shape were consistent with Schriefer's head injury. Waymanan didn't deny striking Schriefer in the head with the block, but said he did it after Schriefer was already dead. Prosecutors were skeptical.
He says he hit him with a block when he was wrapping up his body at his mother's garage, and hit him with a block of cement just out of frustration, expressing an anger at Eric Schriefer for having caused him to do this. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Because of the plea agreement, Joseph Waymanan was sentenced to 12.5 years in prison for Eric Schriefer's death. He'll be eligible for parole after 8 years.
12 years in prison for a murder where you drive your vehicle over a body one time, then back over it again, if the witnesses are to be believed. To me, that's not justice.
The family wanted us to make some type of negotiation, compromise on the amount of time, and in return for recovery of the body. And I remember even telling Eric's mom and dad and brother that Joe Waymanan is not going to get what he deserves for what he did to Eric. I made that very clear to them, and that's what I even told the court at sentencing. But we were willing to make a compromise in order to recover the body and put the case behind.
The other reason for the deal was the disappearance of the 2 eyewitnesses. They are still missing to this day.
I hope they are okay. I hope nothing has happened to them. And if we can find out who is responsible for their disappearance, for their being conveniently absent at a time when we needed them, for us having to reduce the charge from murder in the second-degree intentional murder down to unintentional, we want to know. Then there'll be a little bit of finality to this case.
The case was solved by forensic evidence Waymanen couldn't power wash away. Waymanen knew that the blood found in the metal crevices and the single strand of hair were Schrieffer's, and that forensic testing would prove it.
I strongly believe that there's always forensic evidence that's left behind in any crime scene. It's just a matter of your human eye picking up and looking in certain places and using the current technologies to locate that forensic evidence.
Forensic science was remarkable because without the police department going that extra distance and finding that evidence in the truck, in the tailgate, and the undercarriage, without the medical examiner finding that blood sample with the matching DNA at the end of that alley, we would have been out of luck.
On Memorial Day weekend in 1984, someone placed a body in a cardboard box and slid it down an embankment. The cause of death was homicide, but investigators had no idea when the murder occurred. But science uncovered an important detail of the victim's last night alive. Would it be enough to identify the killer? On a Sunday morning, a fisherman enjoying the Juniata River in central Pennsylvania saw a large cardboard box at the river's edge. Inside was a garbage bag.
He pulled back a piece of plastic a little bit and discovered that it was the part of a person. Didn't know male, female.
The torso was later identified as female. The rest was a mystery.
There was no indicator as to how she met her death.
Above the box on the side of a hill, the underbrush had been tamped down, indicating the box had slid down the embankment from the road above.
The box had been slid down after the dew had settled and had been wiped off by the passage of the box. And that was important to developing a timeline in this case.
Investigators noticed a grease-stained puncture hole in the box, and in the grease were small pieces of styrofoam.
Whoever pulled that out of the trunk, when they were lifting it out, caught the box on the latch. That's what I believe it was from.
Someone had gone to great lengths to conceal the victim's identity by removing the head, arms, and legs. To do this, the killer needed time and privacy.
The part that didn't make sense to me about that was if someone could make a person's head, arms, and legs disappear from that day until this day, they could easily make the rest of the body disappear. So there was some reason for the body to
areas of the United States. The weather conditions around the time the body was discovered and the stage of the egg and larvae development allowed the entomologist to provide a rough estimate of the time of death.
was roughly 2 days prior to our finding the torso.
This meant that the victim died sometime late Friday night or early Saturday morning. The autopsy was not able to identify the cause of death. The pathologist found semen present during the autopsy, but there was no evidence of rape. And there was no way to identify the man since this was before DNA testing. Police knew that in order to identify possible suspects, they first had to identify the victim.
We said from the very beginning, if we find out who she is, we'll find out who killed her.
Missing persons reports were checked, but no one fit the description of the torso. 1 year after Jane Doe, the unidentified murder victim was buried in a pauper's grave in Pennsylvania, police received what at first was a routine telephone call. A woman told police that her ex-sister-in-law, Edna Posey, had been missing for a year. She was able to provide police with a detailed physical description.
She started explaining how Edna would say, "Oh, I can't wear a bikini because of my moles."
This sounded strikingly similar to the birthmarks found on the body, their Jane Doe of a year earlier. The caller also said Edna Posey always wore a belt with a zodiac buckle. Edna Posey was a 31-year-old single mother of an 11-year-old boy, Randy. And she was no stranger to the seedy side of life in the nearby city of Harrisburg.
She was what would generally be perceived as a tramp. Unstable relationships, short-term, problems with alcohol, and not having a stable...
Was not your, I shouldn't say nicest person, but was sort of wild.
Edna's wild streak usually involved men and alcohol. She would meet men in bars, quickly move in with them, and just as quickly move out, only to repeat the same pattern again and again. And she would sometimes disappear for months at a time without saying a word to anyone. Edna was able to admit that her life was out of control and had asked Donald Ruby, her son Randy's Boy Scout leader, if Randy could move in with him.
Donald Ruby had a Boy Scout troop that was comprised largely of boys who had problems in their lives. Most of them were in families with mothers only. The boys had been into trouble, and Donald took this group of boys and formed his own troop with it.
Randy moved in with Donald Ruby and his wife and lived with them as if he were their own son. 42-year-old Ruby worked as a machinist and had no children of his own. While many applauded him for his efforts with troubled youngsters, some questioned his motives.
Well, it's in the eye of the beholder. He did some things that I would have winced at myself, such as the kissing on the lips and so forth. I was never that way, even with my own children.
Edna moved 150 miles away to Virginia, where she took a job as a dental technician while trying to get her life back on track. This is Edna's co-worker, who asked not to be identified for fear of her safety.
She was saving her money, and sometimes in that particular time period, she met a young soldier in the Army band in Virginia. And they became quite close, and was going to move in together and bring Randy down to be with them.
And police believe that Donald Ruby was threatened by the loss of Randy.
The evidence was that she intended to take Randy back with her. We believed and argued that Donald did not want to give up Randy as his son.
Did this mean that Donald Ruby had a motive to kill Edna Posey? Ruby told police that Edna Posey had come to their home to visit Randy on Friday night and planned to stay for the entire Memorial Day weekend.
No, I'm from Virginia.
The next day, Ruby and his wife said they took Edna shopping and dropped her off downtown.
Yeah, actually, just go to the corner.
you back here like 5:30, right?
Okay, great, thanks.
Bye.
When they returned later to pick her up, Edna never showed up.
Given the lifestyle that Edna lived for decades, you could sell it very easily that she just decided to disappear off the face of the earth.
But Edna's son Randy told police a slightly different story.
Hey, buddy. Hey, Mom. Hey.
He said he last saw his mother on Friday night when she kissed him goodnight.
I love you. Okay, see you tomorrow.
A short time later, he said he heard a loud noise coming from the bedroom where his mother was sleeping.
I think he described it as if somebody fallen out of bed.
He said when he woke up the next day, his mother was gone. If the forensic entomologist was correct in his estimate of the time of Edna's death, the noise Randy heard on Friday night may have been his mother's murder. When police searched Donald Ruby's trunk, they found the same type of grease that was found on the box holding Edna Posey's torso. And they discovered the hole in the box was the same size and shape as the trunk latch in Ruby's car. Prosecutors now believed that Donald Ruby murdered Edna Posey on Friday evening. When Donald Ruby was charged with the murder of Edna Posey, police heard some unsettling news about his life with Edna's son, Randy.
We had testimony that when they would come home from camping trips, he would physically touch Randy's private parts, allegedly to feel for ticks. So yes, there was some direct evidence of pedophilia.
He was looking for ticks, but he would examine around the crotch and the rear end a little bit more than a parent probably would explore.
Prosecutors said that was evidence of pedophilia, that Ruby had a sexual fixation with Randy and killed Edna to keep her from regaining custody of her son. They said that the grease and styrofoam evidence on the box containing Edna's body, though circumstantial, tied Ruby to the crime. 3 years after Edna Posey's disappearance, Donald Ruby was convicted of her murder and sentenced to life in prison. Edna's family and friends believed that a cold-blooded killer had gotten justice.
How could you do this? How could you do this to another person? I mean, it wasn't like he just shot her and, there was no pain and she just died. It was the cruel, cruel way that he killed her. And it was just almost unbelievable to me that you could do that to another human being.
From behind bars, Donald Ruby maintained his innocence. He said Edna had countless low-life lovers and any one of them could have committed the crime. His lawyers petitioned the court for a retrial. They claimed there was no proof Donald Ruby was a pedophile and that his rights were violated when jurors heard that testimony. Ruby's defense attorneys also decided to have the forensic evidence re-examined. So they called Dr. Neil Haskell, one of the country's premier forensic entomologists. Dr. Haskell analyzed the eggs and larvae from Edna Posey's body.
way of saying the coppers screwed up. Trying to be professional and diplomatic.
Dr. Haskell analyzed some of the eggs found on Edna Posey's body. After 3 years, they were so dry, they were almost dust. They were then placed in a saline solution to rehydrate them. Dr. Haskell believes these eggs were on Edna Posey's body for only a short time, meaning that Edna Posey was killed sometime late Saturday night or early Sunday morning, not Friday night, as the original entomologist estimated.
Scientific entomological evidence that was presented in this case clearly showed that the time when the death of this individual had taken place had to be much shorter than what the prosecution was alleging.
The meteorological evidence also pointed to early Sunday morning. When the fisherman found the body on Sunday morning, he said there was no dew or condensation along the path the bots traveled down the embankment. And another factor supporting this time frame was the autopsy report. The medical examiner said there was motile or moving sperm in Edna's body at the autopsy. Sperm remains motile in a deceased person for only 24 hours after death. Donald Ruby had an alibi for all day Saturday and Saturday night. After 6 years in prison, Donald Ruby was granted a new trial. And Ruby's new defense team had a surprise piece of evidence. New DNA testing of the semen found during Edna Posey's autopsy uncovered a tantalizing clue about her last night alive. Eight years after Edna Posey's death, forensic scientists analyzed the semen recovered during her autopsy. This time, using new DNA technology which wasn't available at Donald Ruby's first trial. In a shocking development, DNA testing revealed there was semen from 3 different men. And Donald Ruby's DNA was not among them. The autopsy notes revealed that the semen contained motile sperm at the time of the autopsy. Sperm remain motile in a dead person for only 24 hours.
We had at least 3 people, by the evidence, who were with her and had sex with her less than 24 hours before her body was discovered.
We were able to exploit that in the trial by planting the suggestion that Edna, true to form, had gotten on the wild side when she was dropped off in Middletown by Don.
At Donald Ruby's second trial, his defense was the same as the first trial, that he and his wife dropped Edna off on Saturday morning to go shopping. But this time, new forensic evidence helped bolster his story. His attorneys implied that one or more of the unidentified men who had sex with her on Saturday night may have been the killer.
Oh, that was clearly the defense insinuation. The defense clearly insinuated that somebody that Edna was picked up by might have committed this murder.
The other new piece of forensic evidence was Dr. Haskell's testimony, with his view that the original time of death was inaccurate. He testified that improper preservation of the entomological evidence caused an inaccurate estimation of the time of death. He told the jury that Edna Posey died late Saturday night or early Sunday morning, not on Friday night as originally claimed. Further helping Ruby's case was Edna's son, Randy. At the original trial, Randy said he heard a loud thump from his mother's bedroom late on Friday night. But 8 years later, Randy, now 21 years old, recalled nothing about that.
Randy clearly did not remember hearing a thump. We asked him about it. He said he had no independent recollection of it, and thus we did not have the thump in the night to use as testimony.
The defense also claimed that the hole in the carton carrying Edna's body could have been made by thousands of vehicles with the same type of hood latch and grease as was in Ruby's car. After a 9-day trial and 6 hours of deliberation, the jury found Donald Ruby not guilty, a verdict which baffled Edna's friends and family.
Just a total state of shock. They could not believe this. They'd proven a case, and then to have it thrown out like that, and a murderer walking the streets. And I think it was a concern to a lot of people in the area, especially people who had testified against him.
There's some ducks along the highway that, like I said, you learn to appreciate things better when you lose them. You don't have them for a while.
You learn through experience, never try to figure out a jury. Never try to figure out a jury. And I don't know what the jury thought, but they made their decision, and I'll live with it.
And the case, while officially closed, remains open in the minds of those involved.
Who should be scared of Mr. Ruby? Virtually anyone with children. I don't propose to be an expert in pedophilia, but certainly it'd be my lay opinion that a leopard doesn't change its spots.
I'm convinced that Don did not kill Edna. He might have had reason to, but he did not do it. Who did kill her, I have no clue. I just don't, I know it's not Don.
Donald Ruby left town soon after the trial, and no one, not even his own lawyers, know where he is today.
I have had a letter that he sent me later that year. It basically thanked me for testifying on his behalf, and that he was going to have a certain place in his heart for the welfare of the flies in the future.
The letter was hidden for 31 years, not inside a safe, not buried underground, not locked away behind a secret wall. It was sitting inside a family home, behind a loose wooden panel, waiting for someone to finally discover the truth. And when investigators opened that hidden compartment in a quiet Iowa farmhouse, they found something that changed everything. A name, a confession, and a secret that had survived longer than anyone thought possible. For decades, the disappearance of Emily Carter had remained one of the most haunting mysteries in the small farming community of Red Hollow, Iowa. A town where everyone knew everyone. A town where front doors stayed unlocked. Where neighbors borrowed tools without asking. Where people believed terrible things happened somewhere else. Until one cold autumn night in 1992. Until Emily Carter vanished. And the entire town learned that secrets could exist behind familiar faces. Emily was 28 years old, a nurse at the local county hospital, a daughter, a sister, a woman known for remembering everyone's birthday and leaving handwritten notes for patients who had nobody visiting them. She was the kind of person people trusted immediately, the kind of person who made strangers feel like family. On October 17, 1992, Emily finished her evening shift just after 10 p.m. Co-workers remembered her smiling as she walked through the hospital entrance. She joked about the freezing weather. She complained that winter was arriving too early. She told another nurse she planned to stop at a small grocery store before heading home. Nothing seemed unusual. No warning signs. No strange behavior. No reason anyone would think it was the last time they would see her. At 10:18 p.m., Emily's car left the hospital parking lot. At 10:31 p.m., a security camera captured her vehicle near the edge of town. After that, nothing. No confirmed sightings. No phone calls. No witnesses. No explanation. The next morning, Emily's blue sedan was found parked beside an abandoned farm road nearly 6 miles from her home. The engine was off. The driver's door was slightly open. Her purse was inside. Her hospital badge was on the passenger seat. Her wallet remained untouched. Her keys were still there. Everything that belonged to Emily was still inside the car, except Emily herself. The discovery immediately changed the atmosphere of Red Hollow. Because abandoned cars were common, people broke down, people got lost, people made mistakes. But Emily Carter did not disappear. Not like that. She was careful, responsible, predictable, and investigators knew one thing. People like Emily did not simply walk away. The first officers at the scene searched the surrounding area. They found footprints in the mud, but heavy rain overnight had destroyed most of them. They found a torn piece of fabric caught on a fence nearby, but there was no way to identify where it came from. They found tire tracks leading away from the road, but too many farm vehicles used that area. Every clue created another question. Every answer disappeared. The investigation grew quickly. State police joined local detectives. Volunteers searched fields. Farmers opened their land. Helicopters flew over miles of farmland. The community that once felt invisible suddenly became the center of a mystery. Emily's parents stood outside their home every evening, waiting for a car that never arrived. Her younger brother, Daniel, refused to believe she was gone. He called her phone every night, even after the number was disconnected, even after months passed. He said he needed to hear the ringing, because silence felt worse. Detective Michael Hayes was assigned as lead investigator. He had worked dozens of cases, but Emily's disappearance bothered him immediately. There was no obvious motive, no clear suspect, no clear direction. The scene felt wrong, almost too clean. Whoever had taken Emily had left behind just enough evidence to create confusion, not enough to create answers. Detectives began rebuilding her final day. Every conversation, every location, every person she interacted with, they discovered something unusual. 3 days before she disappeared, Emily had requested access to old hospital records, not medical files, administrative files, documents connected to patients from years earlier. At first, nobody thought much about it. Hospitals had paperwork. People requested information. It happened, but investigators discovered Emily had been asking questions about one specific patient, a patient who died in 1989, a patient named Margaret Holloway. The name immediately attracted attention because Margaret Holloway was connected to one of the most respected families in Red Hollow, the Holloway family, a family that had lived in the area for generations, a family whose name appeared on buildings, businesses, and community projects. They donated money. They sponsored events. They were considered local royalty. But Emily's investigation into Margaret Holloway raised a disturbing possibility. Maybe she had discovered something the town wanted forgotten. Detectives interviewed everyone connected to Emily, friends, co-workers, neighbors, family members. Then they discovered another strange detail. Emily had recently told a co-worker something that seemed meaningless at the time. She said, "Sometimes the truth is hidden inside the people who tell you they are protecting you." The co-worker remembered the sentence because Emily sounded upset, but she never explained what she meant. Now investigators wondered, who was she talking about? The first major breakthrough came 2 weeks after Emily disappeared. A farmer named Walter Briggs reported finding something near his property, a small notebook, water damaged, covered in mud. The notebook belonged to Emily. Inside were handwritten notes, names, dates, numbers. Most pages were impossible to understand, but one page contained a sentence underlined 3 times. The family knows. Investigators immediately focused on the Holloway family. The same family connected to Margaret Holloway. The same family Emily had been investigating before she vanished. But suspicion was not proof. And in a town like Red Hollow, accusations against a powerful family could destroy lives. The Holloways denied knowing anything. They claimed Emily had misunderstood old records. They said Margaret Holloway's death was a tragedy with no mystery behind it. They said they wanted answers too. The public was divided. Some believed the Holloways were hiding something. Others defended them. The town became quieter. People stopped talking openly. Neighbors who had known each other for decades began choosing sides. And somewhere in that silence was the truth. Months passed. Then years. The investigation slowly lost momentum. The evidence went cold. The notebook became another forgotten item stored inside an evidence room. Emily's face faded from newspapers. Her name disappeared from headlines. But her family never stopped searching. Every anniversary, they placed flowers beside the abandoned farm road where a car had been found. Every year, they repeated the same words. We are still waiting. 1993 became 1994. 1994 became 1995. The case became one of Iowa's most painful cold cases, a mystery without an ending. But Detective Hayes never completely closed a file. He kept a copy of Emily's photograph on his desk, not because he believed he would solve it, because he believed someone knew. Someone always knew. And 31 years later, that belief would finally be proven true, because inside a forgotten farmhouse, behind a wooden wall that nobody had touched in decades, a family secret was about to be uncovered. And when that secret came out, the entire town of Red Hollow would finally understand why Emily Carter disappeared on that freezing night in 1992. For 31 years, the answer had been sitting in the same place, not hidden in another state, not buried beneath the ground, not lost forever. It was inside a house that people in Red Hollow passed every day without a second thought, a farmhouse surrounded by empty fields, a place where generations of one family had lived, a place where laughter had once filled the rooms, a place where secrets had grown stronger than memories. The Holloway farmhouse. When investigators arrived there decades later, they were not searching for a missing woman. They were searching for the truth behind why nobody had spoken. The discovery began with something simple, a renovation. The old farmhouse had been scheduled for repairs after years of sitting mostly empty. Workers were replacing damaged wooden panels in a hallway when one of them noticed something unusual. Behind the wall was a small space, a hidden compartment. Inside was a metal box covered in dust. No label, no date, no explanation. At first, the workers assumed it was just old family belongings. But when they opened it, they found documents, photographs, letters, and one envelope with a name written across the front, Emily Carter. The discovery immediately reopened one of Iowa's most mysterious cold cases. Within hours, investigators were called back to the property, the same property that had been connected to the Holloway family for generations, the same family Emily had been investigating before she vanished. The box contained dozens of items, old newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, copies of hospital records, and a letter dated October 18, 1992, the day after Emily disappeared. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. Someone had been afraid. The letter began with 4 words, I know what happened. Detectives carefully examined every page. The writer described a meeting, a confrontation, a secret that involved the Holloway family. But the most shocking part came at the end. The letter contained a name nobody expected to see, Daniel Carter, Emily's younger brother, the man who had spent 31 years demanding answers, the man who had publicly blamed the Holloways, the man who had never stopped searching. Investigators immediately questioned what they were seeing. Was Daniel involved? Was he protecting someone? Or was there another explanation? The discovery created a new storm around the case, because the truth was no longer hidden only among strangers. It was hidden inside Emily's own family. Detective Hayes was long retired by then, but when he heard about the discovery, he returned to Red Hollow. He was older, slower, but the same question remained in his mind. Why had the truth waited so long? He reviewed the new evidence carefully, and he noticed something disturbing. The letter mentioned details that only investigators should have known: the position of Emily's car, the contents of her purse, the condition of the driver's door, information that was never released publicly, meaning the writer was not guessing. The writer was there. The person who wrote the letter knew what happened that night. The investigation shifted immediately. The first person questioned was Daniel Carter. At first, he refused to believe the discovery. He said someone was trying to frame him. He said he had spent his entire life looking for his sister. He said he had nothing to hide. But investigators noticed something. Daniel was not surprised by the letter's contents. He was surprised that it had been found. That difference mattered. During the interview, detectives asked one question. Why would someone write your name? Daniel remained silent for nearly a minute. Then he answered, I made a mistake. The room became quiet. A confession? A warning? Nobody knew. Daniel explained that after Emily disappeared, he discovered she had been investigating something dangerous. He said she had contacted him days before she vanished. She told him she was afraid. She told him someone was following her. But she never told him everything, because she believed knowing too much would put him at risk. Daniel admitted something he had hidden for decades. The night Emily disappeared, she called him at 10:37 p.m., 7 minutes after leaving the hospital. The call lasted less than a minute. The original investigation never knew about it, because Daniel never mentioned it. Why? Detectives asked. His answer was simple. Because she told me not to. The call records were checked, and they existed. A missing piece of the original timeline had been found. Emily was alive after leaving the hospital. Alive. And talking to her brother. But what did she say? Daniel finally revealed the words he remembered. Emily sounded nervous. She said, They know I found out. Detectives asked, Who? Daniel looked down. I don't know. But then he admitted something else. After the call ended, Emily sent him a message he had deleted years earlier, a message he had never shown anyone, because he believed it would only create more questions. The message contained 3 words: trust nobody here. Investigators now faced a completely different case. For decades, they believed Emily disappeared because she encountered someone after leaving work, but the evidence suggested something else. Emily knew danger was coming. She was already afraid. She had already discovered something, and she had already started protecting the people around her, including Daniel. The investigation returned to the Holloway family. But this time, detectives looked deeper. They examined Margaret Holloway's death, the woman whose records Emily had been researching before she vanished. Officially, Margaret died from natural causes, a heart condition. No suspicion. No investigation. But Emily's note suggested otherwise. She had written one sentence beside Margaret's name. The medical report was changed. Forensic experts reviewed the old documents, and they found something strange. The original hospital report was missing. Only a revised version remained. A revised version signed by someone connected to the Holloway family. Dr. Robert Holloway, Margaret's son, a respected physician, a man who had helped run the local hospital, a man who had access to records, and a man who had known Emily professionally. Suddenly, the connection became impossible to ignore. Emily was not investigating a random case. She was investigating a person who had power, influence, protection, the kind of protection that could make an entire town stay silent for decades. Then investigators found another document inside the hidden box. A hospital access log from 1992. Emily's name appeared. So did another name. A person who accessed the same files hours before Emily disappeared. Dr. Robert Holloway. The family secret was getting closer to the surface. But one question remained unanswered. Why would a respected doctor risk everything over a decades-old medical record? And what did he do when Emily Carter discovered the truth? Because the hidden box had revealed the beginning of the mystery. But somewhere inside the forgotten pages of Red Hollow's past was the reason Emily never made a home. The name Robert Holloway changed the entire investigation. For 31 years, the people of Red Hollow believed Emily Carter had disappeared because of a moment of violence, a stranger, a random encounter, a terrible accident on a lonely road. But the evidence now pointed somewhere else. Not toward an unknown attacker, toward a family that had spent generations building a reputation of trust, a family that had money, influence, connections, and a reason to protect what they had built. Dr. Robert Holloway had been considered one of the most respected men in town. He treated generations of families. He delivered babies. He attended community events. His name was attached to donations, scholarships, and hospital programs. Nobody wanted to believe he could be connected to Emily's disappearance. But detectives had learned something during the investigation. People rarely hide ordinary things. They hide things that can destroy them. The old hospital records became the center of the investigation. Forensic specialists compared the original documents with the revised versions. The differences were small, almost invisible. A date changed, a signature moved, a sentence rewritten. But together, those small changes created a much larger picture. Someone had altered Margaret Holloway's medical records. Someone had removed information. Someone had made sure the official story would never be questioned. And Emily Carter had discovered it. Detective Hayes returned to the hospital archives. The same place Emily had walked into 31 years earlier. The same hallway where she had searched through records that would eventually cost her everything. He stood outside the old records room. The door had been replaced. The walls had been painted, but the history remained. Investigators examined access logs from 1992. The record showed Emily enter the archive room 3 days before she vanished. She stayed for 42 minutes. Then, exactly 12 minutes after she left, Robert Holloway accessed the same files. At the time, nobody thought it mattered. Now it looked different. The timing was impossible to ignore. Detectives questioned Robert Holloway. He was 80 years old, retired, living quietly outside Red Hollow. When investigators arrived, he seemed calm, too calm. He invited them inside. He offered coffee. He acted like a man who had nothing to hide. But when they mentioned Emily Carter's name, his expression changed. Only for a second, but detectives noticed. You knew Emily was looking into Margaret's records, Detective Hayes said. Holloway looked down. She was curious. Curious enough to disappear? The old doctor remained silent. The interview lasted 3 hours. Holloway admitted Emily had asked questions. He admitted she believed something was wrong, but he denied knowing anything about her disappearance. I cared about Emily, he said. Then why did you access the same records after she did? Holloway looked away. Because I wanted to know what she found. That answer raised another question. If he was innocent, why was he afraid of what Emily discovered? The investigation moved forward. The hidden box continued revealing more secrets. Inside was another item, a photograph, a family photograph. The Holloways standing together at a community event in 1992. Nothing unusual, until investigators noticed something in the background. Emily Carter, standing behind them, watching. The photograph had been taken 2 days before she disappeared. On the back was a handwritten note. She saw everything. The handwriting was compared with other documents. It belonged to someone inside the Holloway family, but not Robert. The handwriting belonged to Sarah Holloway, Robert Holloway's daughter, Emily's close friend. The discovery shocked investigators, because Sarah Holloway had been one of the people who searched for Emily. She had attended candlelight vigils. She had spoken publicly about wanting justice. She had stood beside Emily's family for decades, and now her handwriting was connected to evidence hidden inside her own home. Investigators brought Sarah in for questioning. She immediately became emotional. I knew this day would come. The statement surprised detectives. What does that mean? Sarah looked exhausted. It means my family couldn't keep lying forever. For the first time, someone inside the Holloway family was willing to speak. Sarah explained that her father had always controlled everything. The family, the business, the reputation. She said Robert Holloway believed protecting the family name was more important than anything else, even the truth. According to Sarah, Emily discovered that Margaret Holloway had not died from natural causes. The elderly woman had been suffering from years of financial abuse. Family members had controlled her assets, changed documents, moved ownership, and when Margaret threatened to expose them, she became a problem. Emily found evidence showing that Margaret had been pressured into signing documents she did not understand, documents that transferred control of her property. documents that benefited members of the Holloway family. But Emily found more. She found proof that someone inside the family knew Margaret was being exploited, and that person had tried to cover it up. Sarah admitted she had helped Emily. She had secretly provided copies of documents. She had warned Emily to be careful, but she denied knowing what happened afterward. "I thought she would expose them," Sarah said. "I thought she would go to the police." What stopped her? Sarah looked at the floor. Someone she trusted. The room became silent. "Who?" Sarah took a deep breath. Then she said the name. Daniel. Emily's brother. The investigation turned once again, because now the family's secret had another layer. Daniel Carter had hidden information. The phone call, the message, the envelope. But why? Was he protecting Emily, or was he protecting someone else? Detectives returned to the Carter family home. Daniel agreed to another interview. This time, he did not deny anything. He admitted he had received something from Emily before she disappeared. An envelope. The same envelope he claimed he destroyed. But he had lied. He never destroyed it. He kept it for 31 years. Inside was a handwritten letter. Emily's final warning. Daniel placed it on the table. His hands were shaking. "I was supposed to give this to the police." "Why didn't you?" Daniel looked at the letter. "Because Emily told me if anything happened to her, I had to protect the truth." Detectives opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, only a few sentences. But those sentences changed the case forever. Emily had written, "The person who knows the truth is not who you think." And beneath that, a name. A name that nobody expected. A name that would finally explain why Emily Carter vanished in 1992. A name that would shock the entire town of Red Hollow. The name written at the bottom of Emily Carter's final letter was not Robert Holloway. It was not Sarah Holloway. It was not even a member of the Holloway family. It was someone investigators had trusted from the beginning. Someone who had been standing close to the case. Someone who had helped search for Emily. Someone who had spent decades telling the town he wanted justice. The name was Detective Michael Hayes. For several seconds, nobody in the interview room spoke. The same man who had spent years carrying Emily's photograph on his desk. The same man who had promised her family he would never stop searching. The same man who had reopened the investigation decades later. His name was now written in the final message left behind by the woman he failed to find. Detectives immediately questioned Daniel Carter. Why was his name there? Daniel looked exhausted. "I don't know." "You kept this letter for 31 years. "Yes." "And you never read it?" Daniel hesitated. That hesitation answered more than words. The investigators knew. Daniel had read it. The question was why he hid it. Daniel finally admitted the truth. He had opened the letter the night Emily disappeared. He had not waited. He had not followed her instructions. He was scared. Inside, Emily had written that she discovered someone inside the investigation was interfering. Someone was removing information. Someone was directing attention away from the real evidence. She did not know who, but she knew one thing. She could not trust everyone wearing a badge. Daniel said he believed the warning, but he was afraid to accuse a detective, a man who controlled the investigation, a man who had access to every piece of evidence. So he stayed silent. For decades, the revelation shook the entire case. Because if Michael Hayes was involved, the investigation had not simply failed. It had been manipulated. Detectives reviewed every decision made in 1992, every interview, every search, every piece of evidence. And slowly, a disturbing pattern appeared. Important leads had disappeared. Witness statements had been ignored. Evidence connected to the Holloway family had been classified as unreliable. And the strange thing was, many of those decisions came directly from Michael Hayes, the man who led the investigation, the man who decided what mattered, the man who decided what did not. One of the first things investigators reviewed was the notebook found near the abandoned farm road. Emily's notebook, the one containing the phrase, "The family knows." The original report stated that only several pages contained writing, but when investigators examined the notebook again with modern technology, they discovered something hidden. Several pages had been removed. Not torn, carefully removed. Someone had taken them out. The missing pages were the ones directly before Emily wrote about the Holloway family, the pages that might have explained everything. Investigators checked evidence logs. The notebook had passed through only a few hands. One name appeared repeatedly: Michael Hayes. The evidence room records showed he had personally reviewed the notebook 3 times. 3 times. And nobody knew why. The investigation against the former detective began quietly. No media, no announcements, just investigators following a trail that had been hidden for decades. They searched Hayes' old office after obtaining a warrant. The building had been closed for years. Dust covered the furniture. Old files filled the shelves. Inside a locked cabinet, investigators found something unexpected: a box. Inside the box were copies of documents from the Emily Carter case. Private copies, not official evidence. Personal copies. Among them was a photograph. A photograph never released to public. Emily Carter, standing outside the Holloway farmhouse. The same farmhouse where the hidden box was later discovered. The photo was dated 1 day before Emily disappeared. Investigators stared at it, because the official story was that Emily never went near the Holloway property. But someone had photographed her there, and someone had kept the picture hidden. The back of the photograph contained handwritten words. "She knows about Margaret." The handwriting was compared. It matched Michael Hayes. The case that had once been about a missing nurse had transformed into something much bigger: a conspiracy, a cover-up, a betrayal from someone trusted. But investigators still needed the most important answer. What happened to Emily after she left the Holloway farmhouse? The evidence suggested she had confronted the family. She had discovered the records. She had found the secret. But where did she go afterward? The answer came from an unexpected witness: a retired truck driver named Carl Benson. He contacted investigators after seeing the news about the reopened case. He said he had information he had carried for 30 years. In 1992, Carl had been driving through Red Hollow late at night. He remembered the date because it was the night before his daughter's birthday. Around midnight, he passed an old service road near the Holloway property. He saw 2 vehicles. One belonged to Emily. The other belonged to Detective Michael Hayes. Investigators froze, because Hayes had always claimed he never went near the Holloway property that night. Carl described what he saw: a woman standing beside the road, a man arguing with her, another vehicle parked nearby. He could not hear the conversation, but he remembered one thing: the woman was Emily, and she looked frightened. Investigators asked why he never came forward. His answer was simple: because the detective told everyone not to trust rumors. Carl believed him. Everyone did. That was the power Michael Hayes had. He was not just investigating the mystery. He was controlling the story. The investigation moved rapidly. Former colleagues of Hayes were questioned. Some defended him. Others admitted they had doubts. One former officer revealed something shocking. Years after Emily disappeared, Hayes had privately told him, "We will never find her." The officer remembered asking why. Hayes responded, "Because some people are better at disappearing than others." At the time, it sounded like a frustrated detective. Now it sounded different. It sounded like knowledge, not suspicion. Knowledge. The evidence against Hayes continued growing, but he was no longer alive. Michael Hayes had died 5 years earlier. He would never answer questions. He would never face a courtroom. The man who controlled the investigation had taken his secrets with him, or so everyone thought, because investigators discovered one final item inside his old belongings: a small audio recorder, hidden in a desk drawer. The device contained only one recording. The date was October 18th, 1992, the day after Emily disappeared. The voice was unmistakable: Michael Hayes. And the first sentence on the recording changed the entire case. He said, "She found out everything." A second voice responded, a voice investigators immediately recognized, Robert Holloway. And then came the sentence that revealed the darkest truth of Red Hollow. We have to make sure nobody ever knows what she saw. The recording lasted only 4 minutes. For minutes, that was all investigators needed to understand that the mystery surrounding Emily Carter had never been a simple disappearance. It was a cover-up, a carefully protected secret, a secret that involved people who were supposed to protect the truth. The first voice belonged to Michael Hayes. The second belonged to Robert Holloway, two men from completely different worlds. One was a respected doctor. The other was a decorated detective. But on that recording, they were not protecting the law. They were protecting themselves. Investigators enhanced the audio. They removed static. They isolated every word, every breath, every pause. The conversation was incomplete, but what remained was enough to change history in Red Hollow. Hayes spoke first. She knows about Margaret. Holloway responded, "How much?" Hayes answered, "Enough." A long silence followed. Then Holloway asked, "What does she have?" Hayes replied, "Copies." That single word explained everything. Emily had not disappeared because she accidentally discovered a secret. She had disappeared because she possessed proof that could destroy powerful people. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Authorities searched every remaining property connected to Michael Hayes and Robert Holloway. They found more documents, more hidden records, more evidence showing the two men had been connected long before Emily vanished. Years earlier, Hayes had investigated complaints involving the Holloway family, financial disputes, medical concerns, property conflicts, and every time nothing happened, every complaint disappeared. Every accusation lost momentum. The system had protected them. And Emily Carter had discovered why. The hidden records revealed that Margaret Holloway had been preparing to expose her own family. She had written letters. She had saved documents. She had planned to reveal that her assets had been manipulated. But before she could do it, she died, officially from natural causes. But Emily found evidence suggesting something else. The medical records had been altered. The timeline had been changed. And someone had helped make the truth disappear. That person was Michael Hayes. But investigators still needed to answer one question. What happened to Emily? The recording revealed the motive. It revealed the conspiracy. But it did not reveal where Emily went. The search returned to the Holloway farmhouse, the same place where the hidden box was discovered. This time, investigators used modern technology, ground scanners, advanced imaging, techniques unavailable in 1992. And beneath the old property, they discovered something nobody expected, a second hidden structure, buried deeper, covered by years of soil. Inside was a small room, empty, except for one item, a silver necklace. Emily's necklace. Her family immediately identified it. Daniel Carter recognized it instantly. He said Emily wore it every day. It was the last gift their mother gave her before she died. The discovery confirmed something investigators feared. Emily had been inside the hidden structure, but there was no body, no remains, only the necklace, and another clue, a fingerprint. A single fingerprint on the inside of a metal container. Investigators compared it with old evidence. The result was shocking. The fingerprint belonged to Michael Hayes. But Hayes had claimed he never entered the property. He had claimed he only investigated from the outside. The evidence proved otherwise. He was there. He had been inside. He had touched the container. He had handled evidence connected to Emily. And he had lied. For decades, the cold case had finally cracked. But the final answer was still missing. Where was Emily Carter? Investigators turned back to the recording. They listened again. This time, they noticed something beneath the voices. A sound, a background noise, a mechanical hum. Experts analyzed the audio. They determined it came from a specific type of machine, a grain elevator, a machine used on farms. And in 1992, only one location near Red Hollow had that exact equipment. the Holloway family's old agricultural property, the same property that had never been fully searched. The search began immediately. The abandoned farm had been untouched for years. Old buildings collapsed, fields overgrown, machinery rusting. But beneath an old storage building, investigators found something, a sealed concrete area, hidden beneath the floor. Inside was a collection of items, clothing, personal belongings, old documents, and a diary. Emily's diary. The final pages were missing, but several entries remained. The last complete entry was dated October 17, 1992, the day she disappeared. Emily wrote, "I know who is involved. Then, I know who I can trust." Investigators turned the page. The next sentence was incomplete. Only a few words remained. They told me Daniel. The rest had been torn away. But one thing was clear. Emily believed someone close to her was involved. Someone she knew. Someone she trusted. The investigation returned to Daniel Carter. Again, the man who had hidden the letter. The man who had hidden the phone call. The man who had hidden pieces of the truth. But this time, investigators had something different. The missing final pages from Emily's diary. The pages Daniel had kept. When detectives confronted him, he finally broke. He admitted he had found the diary years earlier. He admitted he removed the pages. He admitted he knew Emily suspected someone. But he insisted he did not kill her. "I was protecting her." The detectives asked, "From who?" Daniel looked at the floor, then said, "From our own family." The statement shocked investigators, because the Carter family had never been connected to the Holloways. Until now, Daniel revealed the final secret Emily discovered, a secret hidden even from him. Margaret Holloway was not just connected to the Holloway family. She was connected to the Carters, a relationship buried for decades, a connection that explained why Emily had become involved, and why so many people wanted the truth buried. Emily Carter had not uncovered someone else's family secret. She had uncovered her own, and the person who knew the entire story had been hiding in plain sight since the beginning. The final pages of Emily's diary were still missing, but investigators finally understood one thing. The night Emily disappeared was not the end of the mystery. It was the moment the secret began, and the person who had taken those missing pages was about to reveal why Emily Carter never came home. The missing pages from Emily Carter's diary were the final pieces of a puzzle that had been broken for more than 3 decades. For years, investigators believed the truth was hidden somewhere outside Red Hollow, in abandoned buildings, in forgotten fields, in places where criminals buried evidence. But the truth had never been far away. It had been inside the people who claimed they wanted answers. The diary changed the direction of the entire investigation, because Emily was no longer just a victim. She was an investigator. She was following a trail, and she was getting dangerously close to the center of a secret that involved 2 families, the Holloways and the Carters. Daniel Carter finally admitted what he had done after Emily disappeared. He searched her room. He found the diary hidden beneath a loose floorboard. He read every page, and what he discovered terrified him. Emily had been investigating Margaret Holloway's death because she believed the official story was false. But she discovered something even more shocking. Margaret Holloway was not just a patient from the hospital records. She was someone connected to Emily's own childhood, someone whose name had been deliberately removed from family history. Daniel explained that their mother had always refused to talk about Margaret. Whenever the name appeared, conversation stopped. Questions were ignored. Memories disappeared. As children, Emily and Daniel thought it was just a family disagreement. They never imagined it was something much darker. Emily eventually uncovered old adoption records, hidden documents, changed names, a trail that connected the Carter family to the Holloways. Margaret Holloway had once been involved in a custody dispute, a dispute that had been covered up, a dispute that could have destroyed the reputation of both families. The more Emily investigated, the more she realized something. The secret was not about money, not entirely. It was about identity. about a truth that powerful people had spent decades trying to erase. Detectives asked Daniel the question that mattered most. What did Emily discover? Daniel looked at the old diary pages. Then he answered. She found out Margaret was her grandmother. The room went silent. Emily Carter had spent weeks investigating a woman connected to corruption and fraud, but she never knew she was investigating her own bloodline. Margaret Holloway was her biological grandmother, a secret hidden through false records, a secret protected by both families. The discovery explained why Robert Holloway reacted so strongly when Emily started asking questions. She was not just exposing his family. She was exposing a connection that could destroy both sides. But investigators still needed to understand one thing. Why would Michael Hayes become involved? Why would a detective risk his career? The answer came from another hidden document, a letter written by Robert Holloway, found inside the same farmhouse. The letter was addressed to Hayes. It was dated 1 week before Emily disappeared. The message was short, but terrifying. She has discovered the truth. Handle it before it reaches the authorities. The meaning was clear. Hayes was not simply covering up the investigation. He was part of the plan from the beginning, but the letter revealed something else. Hayes was not working alone. Someone else had helped. Someone who had access to family records. Someone who knew about Emily's connection to Margaret. Investigators compared handwriting from the letter. The signature was not Robert Holloway. It belonged to someone unexpected. Sarah Holloway, the woman who claimed she wanted to help Emily. The woman who claimed she had secretly provided information. The woman who said she was trapped inside her father's control. Investigators brought Sarah back for questioning. This time, she did not deny it. She admitted writing the letter, but she claimed she wrote it because she was desperate. That wasn't a threat, she said. It was a warning. Detectives asked, "Warning for who?" Sarah looked at them. "For Emily." The interview changed again. Sarah explained that she had discovered her father and Hayes were planning something. She knew Emily was in danger. She tried to warn her, but she was too late. "Why didn't you go to police?" Sarah's answer was painful. "Because Hayes was the police." That sentence explained the fear that controlled Red Hollow for decades. People knew something was wrong, but nobody knew who they could trust. Sarah revealed that on the night Emily disappeared, she followed her father. She saw Emily arrive at the Holloway property. She saw Hayes arrive minutes later. She saw an argument, but she did not see what happened afterward, because someone forced her to leave. Someone she never expected. Her own brother, Robert Holloway's son, Thomas Holloway. The investigation expanded again. Thomas Holloway had never been considered a suspect. He was living in another state, running a successful business, a respected member of his community. But when investigators reviewed the old evidence, they discovered something disturbing. Thomas's vehicle was seen near the abandoned farm road the night Emily disappeared. A witness had reported it, but the statement was buried. The witness was never interviewed again. Another piece of the original investigation had been ignored. Another piece connected to Michael Hayes. Investigators located Thomas Holloway. He agreed to speak. At first, he denied everything. He said he barely remembered 1992. He said his family had already suffered enough. Then detectives showed him the photograph, the one taken outside the farmhouse, the one showing Emily, the one showing him standing nearby. His expression changed. For the first time, the confident man looked afraid. "Who gave you that?" he asked. Detectives did not answer. They watched him, and they knew, because innocent people usually ask what evidence means. Guilty people ask how it was found. Thomas finally admitted something. He had been there, but he claimed he did not hurt Emily. He claimed he arrived after the confrontation. He claimed she was already gone. Where did she go? Thomas remained silent. Then he said, "My father knew." The investigators pushed harder. "Your father is dead." Thomas looked away. He left something behind. "What?" Thomas whispered. The truth. That night, detectives searched Thomas Holloway's old storage unit. Inside, they found hundreds of family documents, photographs, letters, and one final envelope. The envelope contained a copy of Emily's missing diary pages. The pages everyone had been searching for. The pages that revealed what happened in the final hours of Emily Carter's life. The first line was enough to change everything. Emily had written, "I know who betrayed me." And beneath that sentence was a name that would lead investigators to the shocking arrest that ended Iowa's most haunting cold case. The missing pages of Emily Carter's diary were finally found. After 31 years of silence, after decades of false leads, after countless searches through fields, homes, and forgotten records, the final words of the woman at the center of Iowa's most haunting cold case had returned, and they contained the one thing investigators had been searching for since 1992, a name. The diary pages were placed inside an evidence bag. Every word was photographed. Every mark was preserved, because investigators knew they were not just reading a diary. They were reading the final thoughts of a woman who knew she was walking into danger. The first page began with a sentence written only hours before Emily disappeared. "I finally understand why they were afraid." Detectives continued reading. Emily described the discoveries she had made, the altered hospital records, the missing documents, the hidden connection between the Carter and Holloway families. But the most important revelation was not about Robert Holloway. It was not about Michael Hayes. It was about someone much closer, someone Emily believed she could trust. The diary continued. "I thought Daniel was protecting me. I was wrong." The room became silent. For 31 years, Daniel Carter had been seen as the grieving brother, the man who searched, the man who waited, the man who carried Emily's memory. But now, Emily's own words appear to tell another story. Investigators immediately brought Daniel back for questioning. This time, everything changed. The detectives no longer approached him as a witness. They approached him as someone who knew more than he admitted. Daniel entered the room carrying the weight of decades. He looked older, broken, but when the diary pages were placed in front of him, his reaction was immediate. He knew those words existed. "Why did you remove these pages?" detectives asked. Daniel stared at them. "I was trying to protect her. She wrote that she couldn't trust you." Daniel closed his eyes. "I know." The answer shocked investigators, because it meant Daniel had known Emily's final thoughts for years. He had hidden them. But why? Daniel finally explained the truth, a truth he had carried alone. After Emily disappeared, he discovered she had planned to meet someone that night. Not Robert Holloway, not Michael Hayes, someone else. Someone she believed could help her. Daniel found a note in her room, a note that simply said, "If I don't return, talk to him." Below it was a name, the name Daniel had spent decades protecting, because the person Emily trusted most was their father, John Carter. Emily and Daniel's father had died years earlier, a quiet man, a man who rarely spoke about the past, a man investigators had barely considered because he was already gone. But Daniel revealed something shocking. Before Emily disappeared, their father confessed something to her. He told her the Carter family had been connected to the Holloways for generations. He told her Margaret Holloway was not just a relative. She was part of a secret agreement between the two families, an agreement created decades earlier to hide a scandal. Emily discovered the truth, but she also discovered something else. Their father had known. He had known for years, and he had remained silent. The diary explained why Emily wanted answers. She was not only investigating a crime, she was investigating the people who raised her, the people she trusted, the people who shaped her life. The final diary pages described the night she disappeared. Emily wrote that she went to the Holloway farmhouse because she believed she could force the truth into the open. She believed Sarah Holloway would help. She believed her father's old friend Michael Hayes would protect her. She believed Daniel would understand, but she was wrong. The final entry was incomplete. The last sentence ended halfway. When I saw who was waiting inside, I knew. The rest was missing, but investigators found something else. A second page. Not by Emily. By someone else. The handwriting was identified as Daniel Carter's. It contained only one sentence. I should have stopped them. The investigation reached a new level because Daniel was no longer simply hiding evidence. He was connected to the events after Emily disappeared. Detectives demanded answers. What happened that night? Daniel remained silent for several minutes. Then he finally spoke. I followed her. The confession changed everything. Daniel admitted that after Emily called him at 10:37 p.m., he became worried. He drove toward the Holloway property. He saw Emily's car. He saw the farmhouse. And he saw several people inside. Robert Holloway, Michael Hayes, Sarah Holloway, and another person, someone he never expected, their father, John Carter. Daniel said he stayed outside. He was afraid. He heard shouting. He heard someone threaten Emily. Then he saw her leave the house. Alive, but she was not alone. She was walking with someone she trusted. Daniel said he followed from a distance until the moment everything changed. A vehicle left the property. Emily was inside. Daniel said he followed, but he lost them near the old service road, the same road where Emily's car was later found. Investigators asked the question that mattered. Who was driving? Daniel looked down, then answered, my father. The room froze. John Carter, the man who had been remembered as a grieving father, the man who had spent years mourning his daughter, the man who had never been investigated. According to Daniel, their father had not kidnapped Emily. He had taken her away because he believed he was protecting her. But protecting her from what? That answer came from another hidden discovery. Inside John Carter's old belongings, investigators found a recording, a conversation recorded before his death. John Carter's voice could be heard, older, tired, full of regret. He said, I thought I was saving my daughter. Then another voice answered, a younger voice, Emily. The recording captured their final conversation, and in those minutes, Emily revealed the truth she had discovered, the secret that connected both families, the secret that caused everyone to lie, a secret so powerful that people killed reputations, destroyed evidence, and buried the truth for decades. The recording ended with Emily saying one final sentence, a sentence that explained why she never came home. Dad, if you really love me, you have to tell them everything. And after 31 years, someone finally did. The recording was the final piece of the puzzle. For 31 years, investigators had searched for the moment when Emily Carter disappeared. They searched for the person who took her. They searched for the person who silenced her. But they had been looking at the wrong question. The mystery was never only about where Emily went. It was about why so many people were willing to protect the truth. And the answer was buried inside one family's secret. A secret that began long before Emily was born. The recording recovered from John Carter's belongings was carefully restored. Every second mattered. Every word. Every pause. Because this was the first time investigators heard Emily's own voice after the night she vanished. The conversation began quietly. John Carter sounded nervous. Emily sounded angry. Not afraid. Angry. She knew something. Something that had been hidden from her entire life. You knew, Emily said. John replied, I was trying to protect you. Emily answered, you protected them. That sentence changed the way investigators viewed the entire case. Because Emily was not talking about a stranger. She was talking about her own family. The recording revealed that years earlier, John Carter had discovered the truth about Margaret Holloway. He knew the medical records had been changed. He knew documents had been hidden. He knew Michael Hayes had helped cover everything. But he stayed silent. Why? Because he believed exposing the truth would destroy Emily. He believed protecting her from the scandal was more important than telling her the truth. But Emily did not see it that way. She believed silence allowed the people responsible to continue. The recording continued. Emily said, how many people knew? John answered, enough. How many people lied? A long pause. Then John said, everyone. The investigators realized something terrifying. The cover-up was not created by one person. It was maintained by an entire circle of people. People who feared what would happen if the truth came out. Robert Holloway feared losing his family's reputation. Michael Hayes feared losing his career. John Carter feared losing his daughter. And Emily Carter? She feared losing the truth. That was why she kept searching. That was why she kept asking questions. That was why she walked into the Holloway farmhouse on October 17, 1992. She believed the truth could still save everyone. But the truth came with a cost. The recording revealed what happened after Emily left the farmhouse. John Carter followed her, not to hurt her, to stop her. He begged her to leave town, to forget what she discovered, to let the past remain buried. But Emily refused. She told him she was going to the police. She told him she would expose everything. Then John said something that investigators had never heard before, something that explained why Emily's car was found abandoned. I wasn't the only one following you. Emily realized someone else was there, someone watching, someone waiting. The recording ended suddenly, but investigators now knew something important. John Carter was not the person responsible for Emily's disappearance. He was a witness who had spent decades carrying guilt. But one question remained. If John was trying to protect Emily, who actually made her disappear? The answer came from a forensic discovery inside the old Carter home. While searching through John's belongings, investigators found a small key. The key matched a storage locker registered under a false name. Inside the locker was another box, and inside that box was the evidence that finally connected the person who had controlled the entire investigation. The box contained copies of police reports, private notes, photographs, and one document that shocked everyone, a signed agreement between Michael Hayes and Robert Holloway, dated months before Emily disappeared. The agreement was simple: keep the records hidden, control the investigation, protect the family name. But at the bottom was another signature, a third person, someone investigators had never considered, someone who had been helping Hayes and Holloway from the beginning. The signature belonged to Thomas Carter, Emily's uncle, the man who had spent years giving interviews, the man who appeared on television asking for justice, the man who stood beside Daniel during every anniversary, the man who said he wanted answers. Investigators immediately reopened the family interviews. Thomas Carter had always been cooperative, too cooperative. He always provided information before being asked. He always knew details that were not public. He always redirected attention toward the Holloways, because that was where everyone expected the answer to be. But Thomas had been hiding something much bigger. When detectives located him, he did not run. He did not deny knowing about the agreement. He simply said, "I did what I had to do." The investigators asked, "You helped cover up Emily's disappearance?" Thomas looked away. "No." "Then what did you do?" His answer was chilling. "I helped keep her alive." The statement created another mystery, because if Thomas believed Emily was alive, where was she? For the first time in 31 years, investigators considered a possibility nobody wanted to believe. Maybe Emily Carter had not died in 1992. Maybe she had disappeared by choice. Maybe someone helped her vanish. Thomas claimed that after Emily discovered the truth, she was given a chance to escape, a chance to leave Red Hollow forever. He said powerful people wanted her silent, but someone decided there was another way, a secret agreement, a disappearance without a body, a new identity, a life somewhere far away. Investigators demanded proof. Thomas provided a location, a small town hundreds of miles away, a place where someone matching Emily's description had lived for decades. The name on the records was different. The age was different. The history was different. But the photograph was unmistakable. A woman in her 60s, standing outside a small bookstore, with the same eyes, the same expression, the same necklace Emily wore the night she vanished. The cold case that had haunted Iowa for 31 years was about to take its final turn, because investigators were no longer searching for a missing woman. They were searching for Emily Carter herself. And the truth waiting at the end of that road would shock everyone who believed they knew the story. For 31 years, Red Hollow believed Emily Carter was gone, a missing woman, a forgotten name, a photograph on a wall surrounded by unanswered questions. Her family had lived with grief. The town had lived with rumors. Investigators had lived with failure. But now, for the first time, there was a possibility that changed everything. Emily Carter might still be alive. The information provided by Thomas Carter led investigators to a small town nearly 500 miles away from Iowa, a place where nobody knew the name Emily Carter, a place where an older woman named Claire Morgan lived a quiet life. She owned a small bookstore. She volunteered at a community center. She lived alone. Neighbors describe her as kind, private, someone who avoided talking about her past. When investigators compared old photographs, the similarities were impossible to ignore. The same eyes, the same facial structure, the same small scar near her left hand, and around her neck, the same silver necklace found on the Holloway property, the necklace Emily wore in 1992, the necklace Daniel Carter remembered, the necklace that connected the missing woman to the life of Claire Morgan. But investigators knew they needed more than a photograph. They needed proof. DNA testing was arranged. The waiting period felt endless. For Daniel Carter, it was the longest wait of his life. A man who had spent decades wondering if his sister was dead was now facing the possibility that she had been living somewhere else all along. When the results arrived, investigators gathered together. The result was clear. Claire Morgan was Emily Carter, the missing nurse from Red Hollow, alive. After 31 years, the discovery shocked the country. News outlets called it one of the strangest cold case breakthroughs in decades. But the reunion everyone expected did not happen immediately, because when investigators approached Emily, she did not run toward them. She did not cry. She did not celebrate. She simply looked at them and said, "I knew this day would come." Emily agreed to speak, but only under one condition. The entire truth had to come out. No more secrets. No more protection. No more lies. Her statement changed the entire understanding of the case. Emily explained that after the confrontation at the Holloway farmhouse, she realized she was in danger. She had discovered the corruption. She had discovered the altered records. She had discovered that people she trusted had spent years hiding the truth. But the biggest discovery was still ahead. She learned that her entire identity had been built around a lie. The Carter family, the Holloway family, the hospital records, everything connected. Emily said the night she disappeared, she was not kidnapped. She left. But she did not leave freely. She was forced into a decision: stay and fight, or disappear and survive. According to Emily, after leaving the farmhouse, she met with her father, John Carter. He confessed everything. He admitted he had known about the secret. He admitted he had protected people who should have been exposed. But he also warned her. Michael Hayes was not going to stop. Robert Holloway was not going to stop. And someone else inside the system was helping them. Emily said her father arranged a way for her to leave. A new identity, a new location, a new beginning. But he never told her everything, because he was afraid. The question investigators asked was the same question that haunted them for decades. Why did Emily allow everyone to believe she was dead? Her answer was simple: because I knew they would never stop looking. Emily explained that after she disappeared, she watched from a distance. She saw the investigation. She saw her family suffer. She saw Daniel searching. And every year, she wanted to return. But every year, she became more afraid, because the people who buried the truth were still powerful, still connected, still protected. The investigation then turned toward the people responsible for the cover-up. Robert Holloway was dead. Michael Hayes was dead. John Carter was dead. But Thomas Carter was alive, and he was finally arrested. The charges were not for Emily's disappearance, because Emily confirmed he did not hurt her. The charges involved evidence tampering, conspiracy, obstruction, and decades of helping hide the truth. During questioning, Thomas finally admitted everything. He had helped create the false story. He had helped direct suspicion toward the Holloways. He had destroyed records. He had convinced people that Emily was a victim of a stranger, all to protect the family name. The shocking arrest sent waves through Red Hollow. Because Thomas had spent decades pretending to search for answers, he had attended memorials. He had spoken about justice. He had looked directly into cameras and asked people to remember Emily, while knowing the truth was closer than anyone imagined. But the biggest surprise came from Emily herself. When she returned to Red Hollow for the first time in 31 years, she did not go to the police station. She did not go to the courthouse. She went to the abandoned farm road where a car was found. She stood there quietly, the place where everyone believed her story ended. But for Emily, it was the place where a different life began. She placed flowers beside the road, not for herself, for the people who waited, for the family who never stopped searching, for the town that carried the mystery for decades. Then she said one sentence: "I wasn't missing. I was hidden." The words became the headline across the country, because the Iowa cold case was no longer about a disappearance. It was about a family secret, a secret protected by fear, a secret buried beneath lies, a secret that nearly survived forever. But investigators still had one final question. Why did Emily choose to come back now? Why, after 31 years of silence, did she finally reveal herself? The answer was found in one final piece of evidence. A letter Emily had kept all those years. A letter written the night she left Iowa. A letter addressed to Daniel. A letter she never sent. Inside were only a few sentences. But those words explained everything. Emily wrote, "I will return when the people who cause this cannot hurt anyone else." And after 31 years, that moment had finally arrived. The letter Emily Carter kept for 31 years was never meant to stay hidden forever. It was not a confession. It was not an apology. It was a promise. A promise she made on the darkest night of her life. A promise that one day the truth would return to Red Hollow. And when Emily finally walked back into the town that believed she was dead, she brought with her the final chapter of a mystery that had haunted Iowa for decades. But the truth was more complicated than anyone expected, because the people responsible for hiding Emily's story were not just criminals. They were people she loved, people she trusted, people who believed they were protecting something bigger than the truth. Emily sat across from investigators and told the story she had carried alone for 31 years. She explained that the night she disappeared began like any other. She finished her shift. She drove toward the grocery store. But she never intended to go home immediately. She was going to meet someone who had contacted her after she discovered the altered hospital records, someone who claimed they could help her expose the truth. That person was Michael Hayes, the detective who controlled the original investigation, the man everyone trusted, the man who had secretly been trying to contain the damage. Emily explained that she initially believed Hayes was helping her. She believed he was the person who could finally bring the evidence to the authorities. But during their conversation, she realized something. He already knew everything. He knew about Margaret Holloway. He knew about the records. He knew about the documents. He knew about the hidden family connection. He was not discovering the truth. He was protecting it. Emily said Hayes warned her, not with anger, not with threats, with fear. He told her she did not understand how powerful the people involved were. He told her there were names she did not know, people who could destroy her life. Emily asked him one question: "Are you helping me?" Hayes did not answer, and that silence told her everything. Emily left, but before she could return home, Robert Holloway's vehicle appeared. She knew then. They were watching her. The secret was no longer hidden. She was a problem. Emily explained that she drove to the Holloway farmhouse because she wanted answers. She wanted to know why her own family had been connected to the Holloways, why Margaret's name had been erased, why everyone had lied. Inside the farmhouse, the confrontation happened. Robert Holloway, Sarah Holloway, Michael Hayes, and eventually John Carter, her own father. Emily said the hardest moment was not seeing the people who betrayed her. It was seeing her father standing with them, because she realized he had known for years. He had carried the truth, and he had chosen silence. But John Carter was not there to stop her. He was there because he finally understood something. Silence had not protected his daughter. It had endangered her. Emily said her father secretly helped her escape. He arranged documents, money, a place to go, a way to disappear. But before she left, she made him promise one thing. When the truth is safe, tell Daniel. John agreed, but he never did, because fear followed him until his final days. The investigation into the old case continued even after Emily returned, because investigators wanted to know how deep the cover-up went. They examined every document, every signature, every decision made in 1992, and they discovered something disturbing. The original investigation had been sabotaged from the beginning. Evidence was moved, reports were changed, witnesses were discouraged from speaking. The cold case was not unsolved because there was no evidence. It was unsolved because someone made sure the evidence disappeared. The final investigation report identified Michael Hayes as a central figure behind the cover-up, but because he was deceased, he could never face trial. Robert Holloway was also gone. John Carter was gone. The only person left to answer for the conspiracy was Thomas Carter, the man who helped maintain the lie. The man who believed protecting the family reputation was worth more than the truth. During his trial, the courtroom was filled with people from Red Hollow. Some came for justice. Others came because they needed to understand how the town had been deceived for so long. Daniel Carter sat in the front row. For decades, he blamed himself. He believed he failed Emily. He believed he should have followed her that night. He believed one different decision could have changed everything. But when Emily entered the courtroom, she walked directly toward him. She hugged him. And for the first time in 31 years, brother and sister stood together. The moment became one of the most emotional scenes of the entire case, because the mystery that separated them had finally been exposed. The truth had not been buried forever. It had simply been waiting. During the final days of testimony, Emily described the hardest part of surviving, not hiding, not starting over, but watching the world remember her incorrectly. She watched people mourn someone who was still alive. She watched her family suffer. She watched her name become a symbol of a mystery, and she carried the guilt of knowing she could not return. But she also explained why she stayed away, because she believed returning too soon would put others at risk. She believed the people responsible would never stop. Only when the final pieces of conspiracy were uncovered did she feel safe enough to come home. The final piece of evidence entered the courtroom on the last day, the original necklace, the one found beneath the Holloway property, the necklace Emily wore the night she disappeared. The prosecutor placed it on the table, not as evidence of death, but as evidence of survival, because the necklace had traveled with Emily through 31 years of silence. It was the one object that connected the woman everyone lost with the woman who finally came back. The judge delivered the final decision. Thomas Carter was convicted for his role in the decades-long cover-up. The case was officially closed. The headlines changed. No longer, Iowa woman missing since 1992. Instead, cold case cracked. Family secret leads to shocking arrests. But for the people of Red Hollow, closure was complicated, because solving the mystery did not erase the pain. It did not return the years lost. It did not repair the trust that had been broken. Some secrets leave damage that lasts longer than the people who created them. Years later, Emily returned to Iowa again. The town had changed. New buildings replaced old ones. New families lived in old homes. But the abandoned road remained. The same place where a car was found. The same place where everyone thought her story ended. Emily stood there one final time, looking across the fields, remembering the life she left behind. Then she placed a small note beneath the old tree beside the road. The note contained only one sentence. The truth always finds its way home. And after 31 years, the cold case that haunted Iowa was finally silent. For most cold cases, the ending comes with a confession, a courtroom, a verdict, a name finally revealed. But the Emily Carter case ended differently, because the greatest mystery was never only about who was responsible. It was about how an entire community could live beside a secret for so long, how neighbors could smile while hiding questions, how families could gather around dinner tables while carrying memories they were too afraid to share, and how one woman's disappearance could expose decades of silence. After the trial ended, investigators returned to the original case file one final time, the thick folder that followed them through years of frustration. Inside were thousands of pages, reports, witness statements, dead ends, every failed lead, every unanswered question. But now, for the first time, the file had an ending. Emily Carter was no longer a missing person. She was a survivor, a witness, the person who finally broke open one of Iowa's darkest secrets. But even after the arrest and the revelations, investigators discovered there were still unanswered questions. Because not every person involved faced justice. Some names disappeared into history. Some people took their secrets to the grave. And some mysteries remained hidden forever. Detective Hayes was the most controversial figure in the entire case. To some people, he was a villain who destroyed an investigation. To others, he was a complicated man who became trapped protecting powerful people. But the evidence was clear. He used his position to control the truth. He redirected investigators. He hid information. He allowed a false story to survive for decades. And the most painful part was that Emily trusted him. She believed a badge meant honesty. She believed the detective's promise meant protection, until she discovered that even the people responsible for finding the truth could become the people hiding it. The old police department in Red Hollow eventually removed Hayes' name from several historical displays, not because people wanted to erase him, but because they wanted to remember the lesson. Trust must be earned, not assumed. The town itself changed after the case was solved. For years, Red Hollow had been divided. Some residents defended the Holloway family. Others believed they were hiding something. Neighbors stopped speaking. Friendships ended. Families argued. The mystery had created wounds throughout the community. But when the truth finally emerged, people realized something. Everyone had been affected by the same deception. Everyone had been manipulated. Everyone had been searching for answers that certain people worked hard to keep hidden. The abandoned Holloway farmhouse became a symbol, not of fear, not of tragedy, but of the danger of forgotten secrets. The property was eventually sold. The hidden walls were removed. The old rooms where evidence had been concealed were destroyed. But before the demolition began, investigators recovered one final object, a small wooden box hidden beneath the floor. Inside were letters written by Margaret Holloway, the woman whose death started everything. The letters revealed that Margaret had known the truth about her family for years. She knew people were using her name. She knew documents were being changed. She knew the Holloway reputation was built on carefully protected lies. But she also knew something else. She knew Emily existed, and she had tried to find her. One letter was addressed simply, "To the granddaughter I never met." Emily read the letter privately. She never released the full contents. But those close to her said it changed the way she viewed the past. Because for years, she believed Margaret was only another piece of evidence, another mystery, another name in a file. But after reading the letters, she realized Margaret had also been a victim, a person trapped by the same secrets, the same fear, the same silence. The case became more than a criminal investigation. It became a story about generations of people hiding pain instead of confronting it. Years later, Emily returned to work in healthcare. She did not return to the hospital where she worked in 1992. She chose a different place, a different town, a different life, but she kept one thing from her old identity, her name. She said she spent enough years pretending to be someone else. She was done hiding. Daniel Carter remained close to her. Their relationship took time to rebuild. 31 years apart could not disappear overnight. There were memories they missed, moments they could never recover, birthdays, holidays, family events, years that were gone forever. but they had something they never had before, the truth. And sometimes the truth was the only thing that could begin healing. The story of Emily Carter became one of the most talked about cold cases in the region. Documentaries were produced. Books were written. Investigators studied the case as an example of how evidence can survive even when people try to bury it. Because the breakthrough did not come from a dramatic confession. It did not come from a sudden mistake. It came from patience, from technology, from one hidden compartment, one forgotten letter, one fingerprint, one piece of evidence that waited decades for someone to notice. The fingerprint recovered from the metal container became the symbol of the entire investigation. A tiny mark, invisible to most people, but powerful enough to break open a 31-year-old mystery. Because every person leaves something behind. A trace, a memory, a piece of the truth. And sometimes that small piece is enough. The final chapter of the Emily Carter case was written quietly. No celebration, no victory parade. Just a family standing together after years of uncertainty. One evening, Emily visited the old road alone. The sky was turning dark. The fields were silent. The same wind moved through the trees like it had decades earlier. She stood there for a long time, remembering the woman she was before everything changed. The young nurse who believed people were honest. The daughter who trusted her family. The woman who searched for answers even when the answers were dangerous. Then she looked toward the road where her car had been found in 1992. A place that once represented loss. A place that once represented fear. Now it represented survival. The case was closed. The questions had been answered. The secrets had been exposed. But the story of Emily Carter remained a warning, because the most dangerous secrets are not always hidden in abandoned places. Sometimes they are hidden inside ordinary homes, behind familiar names, inside families. And sometimes the truth does not disappear. Sometimes it waits, patiently, silently, until the right moment, until the right person finds it, until one small piece of evidence changes everything. The story of Emily Carter became a reminder that time does not always destroy the truth. Sometimes time protects it. Sometimes years of silence only allow the hidden pieces to wait until they can finally be found. For decades, the people of Red Hollow believed they were living with a tragedy that would never be solved. A missing woman, a forgotten investigation, a cold case sitting untouched in an evidence room. But beneath the surface, the truth had been moving slowly. A document saved by someone who was afraid. A photograph hidden by someone who regretted their actions. A letter kept by someone who could not let go. Every secret left behind a trace. And every trace eventually led back to Emily Carter. After the case was officially closed, investigators continued studying the events of 1992, not because they doubted the outcome, but because they wanted to understand how such a massive deception could continue for so long. They wanted to know how a respected doctor, a police detective, and members of two families could maintain the same lie for more than 3 decades. The answer was complicated. There was no single moment when the truth disappeared. It happened slowly, one decision at a time, one lie at a time, one person choosing silence over honesty. That was what made the case so disturbing, because the people involved were not strangers. They were neighbors, friends, relatives, people who attended the same events, people who stood beside Emily's family while knowing more than they admitted. The investigation showed that the cover-up survived because everyone involved believed they were protecting something. Robert Holloway believed he was protecting his family name. Michael Hayes believed he was protecting his career. Thomas Carter believed he was protecting the Carter family reputation. John Carter believed he was protecting his daughter from danger. But every attempt to protect the truth only created more damage. And the person who paid the highest price was Emily. 31 years of a stolen life. 31 years of living with a different name. 31 years knowing that the people searching for her believed she was gone. After returning to Iowa, Emily spent months adjusting to a world that had moved on without her. Technology had changed. People had changed. The town she remembered existed mostly in memories. The hospital where she worked had new buildings. The streets looked different. The faces were unfamiliar, but the emotions remained. There were still people who remembered her, people who had kept newspaper clippings, people who had saved old photographs, people who had never forgotten. One of those people was a former hospital nurse named Linda Parker. Linda had been one of the last people to see Emily before she disappeared. When they reunited, neither woman spoke at first. They simply stood there. 31 years of questions between them. Then Linda said, Emily asked, "Why?" Linda answered, "Because you were too stubborn to disappear." For the first time in decades, Emily laughed. A small moment. But important. Because the woman who returned was not only a victim of a mystery, she was someone who had survived it. The final investigation also revealed new information about Margaret Holloway, the woman whose hidden story started the entire chain of events. Records showed that Margaret had spent years trying to expose the corruption around her. She had written letters, collected documents, saved evidence, but nobody listened. She was considered old, confused, difficult. Her warnings were dismissed until Emily found them. That discovery changed how Emily viewed the entire case, because she realized she and Margaret had been fighting the same battle decades apart. Both women had discovered the truth. Both women had tried to speak, and both had been ignored. The difference was that Emily survived long enough to finish what Margaret started. The last remaining evidence from the case was placed into a historical archive, the fingerprint report, the hidden letters, the original recordings, everything preserved, not as a reminder of a crime, but as a reminder of what happens when people allow fear to control the truth. Years after the case ended, a group of young investigators visited Red Hollow to study the file. They asked Emily one question. If you could go back to 1992, what would you tell yourself? Emily thought for a long time. Then she answered, "Trust your instincts." The investigators expected something about fear or survival. But Emily continued. Everyone around me told me I was wrong. They told me I was asking dangerous questions. They told me to stop. She looked at the old case files. But I was right. That became one of the most powerful lessons from the investigation. The truth does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it begins as a feeling, a question, a detail that does not make sense. Emily noticed those details. She followed them. And eventually, those details broke open a mystery that everyone else had accepted as impossible. The final headline about the case appeared years later. Not about the arrest, not about the conspiracy, not about the people who lied. It was about the evidence that refused to disappear. Iowa 1992 cold case cracked. One woman's search for truth ends decades of silence. But for Emily Carter, the headline was never the important part. The important part was that her story belonged to her again, not to the newspapers, not to investigators, not to the people who tried to erase her. Her story, her name, her life. On the anniversary of her disappearance, Red Hollow held a small memorial, not for Emily, for everyone affected by the case, for Margaret Holloway, for the families, for the investigators who kept searching, for the people who finally found the courage to speak. Emily stood quietly among them. She looked at the candles glowing in the darkness. 31 years earlier, people had lit candles because they thought she was gone. Now they lit them because she had returned. And in that moment, the cold case that haunted Iowa for decades finally found peace. Not because every person involved received justice. Not because every question had an answer, but because the truth was no longer trapped. The secret was no longer hidden. The silence was finally broken. And the story of Emily Carter became proof of one thing. No matter how carefully the truth is buried, no matter how many years pass, no matter how many people try to hide it, eventually, someone finds a missing piece. And when that happens, everything changes. The final pages of the investigation file were never the most important ones. The most important pages were the ones that almost disappeared, the ones someone tried to remove, the ones hidden behind walls, the ones buried beneath decades of fear. Because the Emily Carter case was never solved by one single discovery. It was solved by every piece of truth that survived. A fingerprint, a letter, a recording, a diary, a memory, small fragments that remained when everything else had been destroyed. And that was the haunting lesson left behind by Red Hollow. People can hide evidence. They can manipulate records. They can control stories. But they cannot erase everything. Something always remains. After the case ended, investigators reviewed the original 1992 timeline one final time. They wanted to reconstruct every minute of Emily's disappearance. Not the version people believed, not the version printed in newspapers. The real timeline. At 10:18 p.m., Emily left the hospital. At 10:37 p.m., she called Daniel. At approximately 11 p.m., she arrived near the Holloway property. And after that moment, the truth became complicated. For years, investigators believed the hours after 11 p.m. were empty, unknown, lost. But they were not empty. They were filled with decisions, conversations, fear, and a desperate attempt by several people to control what happened next. The investigation revealed that Emily spent her final hours in 1992 trying to do something simple. She wanted someone to tell the truth. She did not want revenge. She did not want money. She did not want attention. She wanted answers. Why was Margaret Holloway erased from the family history? Why were medical records changed? Why did people with power protect a lie? And why did everyone she trusted choose silence? Those questions followed Emily for decades. But when she finally returned, she gave investigators the answer they needed. The secret was never just about Margaret. It was about control. For generations, the Holloway family had controlled their image. They controlled businesses. They controlled information. They controlled who was believed. And when Emily discovered the truth, she threatened the entire structure they had built. But the investigation also revealed something unexpected. Not everyone involved wanted to continue the deception. Some people were trapped by fear. Sarah Holloway was one of them. Her testimony became one of the most important parts of the reopened case. She explained that growing up in the Holloway family meant learning one rule: never question the family, never challenge the family, never expose the family. She said Robert Holloway believed reputation was everything. A ruined reputation meant losing power, losing respect, losing control, and that fear became stronger than morality. Sarah admitted that for years she hated herself for staying silent. She watched Emily's family suffer. She watched Daniel search. She watched the town mourn. And every year she considered telling the truth. But every year she convinced herself it was too late. Until the hidden evidence was discovered. Until the wall was opened. Until the past finally came back. Her confession changed how many people viewed the case, because it showed that secrets do not only hurt victims, they also destroy the people forced to carry them. The aftermath of the investigation changed the way Red Hollow looked at its own history. Old stories were questioned. Old assumptions were challenged. People began asking questions they should have asked decades earlier. Who benefited from silence? Who was protected? Who was ignored? The town learned a painful truth. The greatest danger was not one person. It was a culture where everyone assumed someone else would speak. Everyone waited. Everyone hoped someone else would do the right thing. And because of that, the truth stayed hidden. Emily later described the years after her disappearance as living in the shadow of a life she could not return to. She built a new identity, a new career, new friendships. But every day carried the same question. Would the truth ever come out? She kept the old documents. She kept the necklace. She kept the letter to Daniel. Not because she wanted to remember the pain, because she wanted proof. Proof that she existed. Proof that her story was real. Proof that the people who searched for her were not searching for a ghost. They were searching for someone who was still fighting. When asked why she finally returned, Emily gave an answer that surprised many people. She said, "Because I was tired of letting fear make decisions for me." Those words became the final message of the case. Not a message about crime. Not a message about revenge. A message about survival. The Emily Carter case became a reminder that victims are not defined by what happened to them. They are defined by what they do afterward. Emily lost 31 years, but she refused to lose the truth. The final investigation report was archived with one sentence written on the last page. The evidence was always there. The silence was the obstacle. That sentence stayed with everyone involved because it explained the entire mystery. The clues existed. The witnesses existed. The documents existed. The truth existed. The only missing piece was courage. And when that courage finally appeared, the impossible happened. A cold case that had survived 3 decades was finally cracked. A family secret was finally exposed. And a woman who vanished in 1992 finally returned to tell the world what really happened. But even after everything was revealed, one question remained. The question that followed Emily Carter from the first night she disappeared until the day she came home. If she had known the truth would eventually be discovered, would she have made the same choice? Would she have disappeared? Would she have walked away from everything she knew? Emily answered that question years later, and her answer became the final mystery of the Iowa cold case, because the truth was not what anyone expected.